Welcome back. A new full week of trading, not like last week where we only had 4 days. This week, full week of trading. We're going to wind up pretty much the earnings season, and we've got some big ones on tap, including NVIDIA and Snowflake, maybe a little Home Depot as well. Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge. Bang.
All right.
I laugh whenever I see the shark there too.
The shark just has that look of a legal beagle, man. He does.
He does. Yes, he does. Folks, that's Pete Najarian. I'm John Najarian. And this is the Rebel's Edge, officially now. And each day on the Rebel's Edge, we break down macro minute, fantastic futures. By the way, Pete, our friends over at the CME, they better call us back because they're listing mini corn and mini soybean contracts. And there ain't a lot of guys that talk about futures on TV or streaming, but we do. All right. Well, let's dive into macro minutes, shall we, Pete?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. Macro today, I'm going to say a massive hack on the Bybit exchange over in Dubai. So what does that mean? That means for people that left their tokens, their coins on that exchange, $1.4 billion worth of Ethereum was stolen. So that's one of the dangers. That's why people want these hardware wallets, software wallets. They don't like leaving them on exchanges. They thought this one was safe, Pete, but maybe not so safe.
You know, you're right. And I'll tell you what I find in the macro side of things, I usually don't put it in this category. I usually in fantastic futures, but gold. I think when you look at it, John, in this whole group that has been moving more and more and more money over towards gold, you had a good conversation the other day about gold and what does it really look like in Fort Knox? What does the president think it looks like? A lot of people are asking some questions, which makes it even that much more interesting. But what if I told you this year alone, we've had 11 or 12, one of the two, record highs for gold. So people are definitely moving over in that direction. And we're seeing the price of gold go up almost what seems like every single day. And we are fast approaching 3,000. It's going to be very interesting when we get there. Do they turn and pull back or do they just keep on buying?
It'll pull back a little, Pete, but that'll be a buying opportunity is my prediction.
Yeah.
Now let's hit fantastic futures. The shark sent us this, Pete. He said hedge funds are scaling back on their bullish wagers on crude oil. Well, they've been right by scaling back because we topped out at 74. Now we're back down to, I think, 71, Pete. So West Texas Intermediate has now fallen for 4 consecutive weeks. So that's my fantastic future.
I'll just jump on the volatility. You talked about it with Charles Payne just last week on Friday, and for all the right reasons. I mean, you were dead on, and I think it's important to have it here at the Rebel's Edge. So when we take a look, John, we've jumped from 15 on the VIX all the way up to 20. We went over 20. Today, last I looked, we were trading somewhere close to 18. But nonetheless, just look at this. We've had 3 hits in the last very short time frame that really point things out. 36,000 of these, 20,000 of those Julys, 112,000 of these Marches. I mean, these are some very large orders that are going in and getting filled, and they are moving themselves into a position. And it isn't just in the short term. They're going out and they're buying a little bit of time to see where the VIX is going to be. I will always caution people this. When it makes those spikes, these mini spikes that it makes, those happen very, very rapidly. So it's something where, yeah, when you get that lift, take a little something, take it all, whatever. But I'll tell you what, they do come back pretty quickly. So when you start getting up and over 20 plus, I think those are the times where, if nothing else, you've just got to have the discipline to sell half something. But you're going to have to make a move when you see those spikes. And I'll tell you what, this 50-cent character or whoever it is, they continue to come in day after day, it feels like. And the VIX has definitely been moving for them pretty nicely over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, in addition to our algorithms and so forth, Pete, we've got some guys in the VIX pit that update us pretty regularly about those big 50-cent trades. And yeah, it's not Curtis, folks, but it's 50 cent because that's usually about the level of the premium that this trader pays. And you want to know more about it? Well, check out my conversation with Charles Payne from Friday. All right, Pete, let's dive into Domino's, shall we?
Yeah,
now,
let's do it.
Last week we had Walmart tell us the consumer's weakening. And for that reason, the markets got hit because if Walmart's saying that, that's a big swath of America, Pete. Well, same thing with Domino's Pizza. So they reported mixed fourth quarter, better profits, but lower sales. And that is not good for anybody that's touching the public like Walmart and Domino's both do. So shares were under pressure right from the get-go, Pete.
Yeah, definitely there, John. It's still up 5% year to date. I know that's not a huge number, but nonetheless, it's in positive territory year to date. But yeah, it's getting pulled back a little bit. I think one of the things that people are excited about, John, I was reading about this today, is the fact that Warren Buffett seems to be sniffing around and maybe grabbing a little bit of this. So if that's the case, I think that's something that could be one of the reasons why it's maybe not getting hit a little bit harder. When you see the same store sales, though, internationally, and that has had 31 straight years, John, of beating, I would say that's a pretty nice number. Internationally, Domino's pretty much doing what they need to do. It's back here on the States, and we understand some of the problems that people are dealing with right now. Like you said, we did beat on the earnings, but it was the sales. That was where they missed, and they didn't miss by a whole lot. So I don't view this quite as negatively as the push that people were putting on it. I just think it's something that, we're going to have to deal with, and people are still going to get on their phones, John, and call up for that Domino's pizza, in my opinion.
Well, I, of course, agree, Pete. But now let's dive into a stock that's not down, but it's up 30%. But what I will caution some people about, Pete, is that this is a multi-billion-dollar stock, Telix Pharmaceutical. It was up as much as almost 40% in the pre. But when I looked at the volumes that it averages, Pete, this is a head scratcher because there are some days when it trades 5 or 10,000 shares. Now it's trading 271,000 shares today. It is a big stock. Like I say, this is a multi-billion-dollar stock. But why is it moving the way it is? Well, let's talk about it. Basically, they have an imaging agent which basically is used for prostate cancer specific membranes. And obviously, this is a big deal for men because we're the ones with the prostate that have problems with it. And that's one of the main killers of men over a certain age, Pete. So this is a big deal for Telix, TLX. And I would say it'll probably start seeing a lot more volume on a regular basis. I don't think we're going to go back to those 10 and 20,000 share trade days, but this is a big deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And it's the broad clinical label that they've got out there. This is going to be huge for them, John. I mean, they already put up numbers that they threw out there. Revenue up 56%, cash flow up 80%. Like you mentioned, this thing's got a market cap that's absolutely huge. So this isn't just some small little biotech out there who's trying to manipulate around. This is a pretty big boy. As a matter of fact, their cash, John, that they're getting, they were at 581 million. Now their free cash flow is 710 million. Everywhere you look, the numbers look pretty damn strong. I'm really impressed with what these guys have been able to do. It's going to be interesting to see how high this thing actually can get up to. It popped, as you said, and then it kind of pulled back a little bit, up 17%. It's up 40+% on year to date. So it's had a really nice 2025 for all the right reasons, especially what we're seeing today. Great cash position, and the balance sheet is absolutely outstanding. So that's not something that you say very often when you're looking at a biotech, but these guys, they look a lot more like a monster pharmaceutical than they do a biotech. And I think for all the right reasons, people are really gravitating to this stock. As Dad used to always say, if you live long enough, if you're a male, you'll die from prostate cancer. So that's what these guys are working on, and try to maybe at least extend life a little bit longer.
Yeah, well, it's an Australian stock, folks, so not as widely followed, probably as, well, for sure, based on the volumes I just described. But like I say, I think that's changing. All right, Palantir, Pete. This one, biggest 3-day drop since 2022. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth basically has been tasked with reducing military spending by 8%. President Donald Trump wants that, and Hegseth said, I'm going to make it happen. Well, when you're one of the newer members of that billion-dollar club of selling stuff to the DOD, Department of Defense, that was a scary thing for Palantir and Mr. Karp, the CEO over there, to hear. So that's why we've seen it trade down so hard. But you know what, Pete? We've had unusual option activity in this one for quite a while. And more recently, the 19th, so just last week, we had somebody buy 20,000 February 100 puts. Well, stock traded down to 92 today. So what are those puts worth? The right to sell it at 100? Well, the right to sell it at 100 when it's trading 92 is worth $8. You saw what they paid for those, Pete. So if you bought those for 65 cents, a 10 lot would have meant $650 because every option's for 100 shares. Now you turned that into $8,000. That's why we follow the smart money, folks. That's why you should go over right now after this broadcast and go to marketrebellion.com/get started so you can start taking advantage of it too.
Yep, absolutely. And the last thing I'd say on Palantir, John, I think you covered it perfectly, but the AI and the counterterrorism, and they're in the right spot. They're in the sweet spot. And then you look over and you see the fact that they've got cash flow of $1 billion, and then they've got cash to debt of $5 billion. They're not struggling. This isn't some company that this is going to bang them down pretty far, John. At some point, when we start seeing any kind of call activity, this is one of those where I start to get pretty itchy and want to get involved again, because it was 125 before this dropped down to 92. Now, had it run too far too fast? Probably. But Hegseth, as he's going through this, he's going to spread that 8% cut over 5 years. It's not like they're coming in saying, all right, let's cut this son of a gun. No, they're spreading it all out. So because of that, I think there's a lot of good reasons to say maybe this is a little overdone. I would have said the same thing about not too terribly long about the stock to the upside. Maybe it was a little bit too long in the tooth. Well, now it's pulled back. Now I think we have to look for a while, but any opportunity that says, hey, we're ready to turn and burn, I think this is a stock that you want to be a part of.
Yeah, I would agree, Pete. This is one that I like, and I love buying it on dips. And this is a pretty significant one, 20% in 2 days. That's pretty significant. And as we said, 4 sessions in a row, it's been down. All right, now let's wind it up, Pete, with Pony AI. This explosive gains this past week. It's Chinese autonomous vehicle tech. And because it's China, they are going to get on the road faster. I mean, I know Waymo's in San Francisco. That's the Google autonomous vehicle taxi service, Pete. But these guys are getting on the road in China right away, in Guangzhou, China. And the stock is now up 65% from their November IPO, but they're having a rough day today, right, Pete?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, John, I like what these guys do. They're the first ones to be able to get all of the different permitting and all the rest of it. So obviously they're a favorite of the let's be honest, these guys are not capitalists over there. So the government gets involved pretty damn quick over there, John. But here's the thing that makes me a little bit excited about what they're doing. So they're not just stopping with what they're doing with autonomous as far as cars and the robo-taxis and that side of things, John. They're looking to go next into the truck fleets, which could be something very, very big for that. So I think this is a name that we want to keep it in front of us. We want to keep in touch with where it is and what they're doing and how far away they are from that with the trucks, because that could be a major, major catalyst. We already know that they've cozied up to the government pretty well. Well, that tells me that they probably got the first choice when it comes to the trucks. I'd keep a very close eye on Pony.
Yeah, well, it is one of those AI plays, Pete, that, the good Lord giveth and the good Lord taketh away. Like Pete has already emphasized about the VIX, folks. If you get something that moves as big as this moved last week, and you chose not just to say, I'm just going to ride it out, that's the wrong decision. It really is. You should take some money off the table, even if it's taxable, and then deploy it on days like this when it's down big. You'll thank us for that kind of move if you're somebody who actually trades. All right, Pete. Take a look at a little thing by PK Subban because, yep, I do too. And here he's laying down some truth on Stephen A. and the crew. Let's take a listen.
I'm sick and tired of making athletes greats, all-time greats that aren't the best examples. Stephen A., you want athletes to be educated.
I love Stephen A.'s reaction to it. Look at how Mr. Calm and cool, how he
up to the All-Star game and being on the court. Because you're making 100, 200, 300 million, you should be out there banged up. You should be. That's why we pay you.
Right? Where is he wrong?
I don't care if you play 50 years. I want your best 10.
I want your best 10 years. That's right.
I want you to go all out. I want Michael Jordan. I want Kobe. That's what I want in every sport. That's the guy that I follow. If you're a different version than that, you don't get my respect.
That's right. That's right. Load management. You've said it for years on this show and elsewhere, Pete. Load management is ruining the NBA. Some of those stupid skills competitions, instead of playing a game. I don't care that the games used to be 170 to 155, just because nobody plays defense. So what? At least you're seeing the best athletes on the planet competing in that sport. Now, skills competition for basketball. Pete, I did this, by the way, real quick.
Yeah.
I took a look at the NFL, and they used to play football, and those games used to be like 66 to 57 or whatever, because nobody played defense. You can't blitz and all that kind of stuff. They tried to make it so that players didn't get hurt. I get it. But like Pete Rose and Dempsey, in that All-Star game where Pete Rose ended the guy's career by, just taking him out at home plate. I get it. Players don't want their career ended like that. But you've got to give them something better. And even though I was doubtful, Pete, apparently the NFL isn't as far off as I thought. And I guess it just reiterates what you always say, that they are, everything in televised sports. So, for instance, forget about the past and those games that were pre-2023 when they used to play the Pro Bowl. Now they do flag football, and the NFL's trying to roll out flag football. Who knows? They may have a flag football league, Pete, a pro flag football league. But they're doing that. They like the skills competition the way they do it with throwing, with whoever it is, whether it's somebody like Mahomes. I know it wasn't Mahomes, but somebody, a quarterback like that, and what they can do with the ball and so forth. People apparently like it. It's record, and I do mean record revenue. And guess what, Pete? It was drawing like 4.5 million people to watch it. These other sports like basketball, they don't draw 4.5 million on 10 games. It's sad. But these guys do it just with a skills competition. All right. I'll throw it back to you, Pete.
And I'll say this. I don't believe for 1 second, and I think you'll agree with this, John, that the NBA value of those teams is what they say it is. How can it be? I know they got that TV contract, so that certainly helped, right? I mean, they got that big TV contract from ESPN. But even with that, I can't believe that these guys, because that contract is never going to happen again. I'm going to go out there right now and say NBA ain't getting that ever again, because the numbers just aren't there. For the NFL, the numbers are there, and they continue to be very, very strong. They seem like they continue to go up every single year. We talk about ratings and everything else. But what I like is this. Not everybody believes in load management. And I feel bad for Pop. Popovich is the guy who basically started all this down in San Antonio, and he's now struggling in his health, and he's not looking too good at this point in time. We'll see how things go, and the prayers go out to him. But the one prayer I don't go out for him with is this load management thing. What a crock of crap this is. You go out and you see what these guys do in the NHL. They dropped the gloves and went at it right away. I'm not saying that's the greatest thing in the world, but that's the emotion that hockey brings. That's the all-in that they bring. You paid to see hockey. You paid to see these guys go after each other as much as they want because they're competitors, right? That's what I think we were getting from PK. So all of what he said, I completely 100% agree with. And I think it's important to know that A guy like Anthony Edwards has spoken out many, many times right here, the Timberwolves, maybe considered one of the best young players in the NBA. He's only 23 years old, John. He's been playing like 3-4 years in the NBA already. And he's arguably one of the most exciting, one of the best players, I think, in the NBA. He's kind of a baby Jordan, everybody likes to call him. But he is an amazing kid, and he doesn't believe in load management. He's came out multiple times now saying, hey, look, you get paid the big bucks to get out there when you're only at 70%. You don't always feel 100%. Sometimes you're 60%, 70%, 80%. You go out there and you play the damn games, just like Michael Jordan and just like Kobe Bryant. So I love what the NHL did. I wish they had the opportunity, John, every year. Forget this whole thing about the All-Star game and everything else. Just get out there and have some of these, the 4 countries or whatever you want to do, something where they really want to play. And I think that was the thing, the takeaway for me was that really proved it this year that the NBA, it stunk it up. Some of the worst ratings, John, ever. It was, I think, their second worst ratings in the history of that. So that says a lot. And then all of a sudden you see the NHL, boy, that different country thing, and you've got Sweden and you've got Canada and you've got the US and everybody playing one another. That was something people wanted to see. And those players played it like it was a real game, like it was an Olympic game. That's the difference. The NBA doesn't do that.
Well, I have to agree, Pete, and they should.
Yeah.
They really should.
All right.
All right.
As we get into the NFL, John, I'll just jump with you on this one. So we all know who some of the great players are, right? And they're going to get all the name and numbers, all this whatever, and they go to the combines, which is Thursday. I'll be watching, of course. I absolutely live for the combines, even though I'm the first guy to say it's meaningless, because it is meaningless, right? I mean, you want to get a guy who actually looks like he runs a 4.40 on the football field. Just because he can run a 4.4 doesn't make him, or a 4.3, doesn't really make him any better. It's what they look like on film. But all that being said, it's still fun to see these freaks run. 350-pounders who can run a 4.740 like that big kid Carter down at Georgia when he went down to the combine. I mean, it's unbelievable. But I'm looking at the day 2, day 3 type guys that are going to get in the draft. So here's a couple for you, John. Mike Green, he's an edge rusher out of Marshall. He's 6'4", 250 pounds. Kind of sounds a lot like the prototypical guy on the outside who's going to get after the quarterback, right? Well, he only led all of FBS with 17 sacks this past year. This kid's going to be somebody to watch. Donovan Jackson, the offensive tackle from Ohio State, another one. But the guy I wanted to focus on for you and I, we're former linebackers. You were with the Bears. I was with the Vikings in Tampa. How about this Danny Stutzman guy from Oklahoma? First of all, if you go back, and there he is right there. This was on Twitter this year, John. He comes out there and says, you know what, guys? I want to give you guys some money because you guys work just as hard as we do. I got money. Now, we didn't hear this from the Sanders boys that I remember, right? No, we didn't. No, he's riding around fucking Colorado in his Rolls Royce. But this guy has his money, and he wants to share it with the other 18 or 19 walk-ons, John, because he knows it's not fun for them to be walk-ons. It's work every day, and they get pushed around. They get no respect. But this guy gave him respect and gave him money. So I'm really in his camp. Plus, he's a 6'4", 250-pound linebacker like they're supposed to be, who can run the sideline to sideline and make plays everywhere, 338 tackles in 3 years. I think this guy knows a little something about playing football. But is there anybody out there that you're looking at, John, where you say, he might not be a first-rounder, but I like this guy? I mean, I think there's some safeties you could pick. There's a wide receiver down at TCU, John. He's only 6'5", 230 pounds. He might be one of them. Savion Williams, let me tell you, 40-inch vertical. The guy can broad jump 11 feet. I mean, some of these freakish numbers and stuff are outrageous. And then there's a safety from South Carolina with numbers that just blow his numbers away. I mean, it's amazing how good of athletes they've become year after year after year. But is there anybody you got your eyes on kind of that might be a second or third day type guy?
Well, I'll have some for you tomorrow, Pete. But I was going through some of the old stats. Obviously, Worthy, for instance, has the fastest time ever for a running back, 4.21. And allegedly he had a 4.19 in there too, Pete. But when I was looking, and you see as I was doing it, the NFL has a great site for that, and they show everything in the combine, and it shows history. So in other words, the fastest person ever, the best high jump or broad jump ever, and all that kind of stuff. One that I loved was, since Iowa has put out so many big stud tight ends lately, I loved that Kittle at 255 pounds ran a 4.5 at the combine. Now that's a big dude, 6'4", 250, and he looks skinny.
Yeah.
But those kinds of things impress me. And like you said, it's not just about how he looks. It's not just about that speed that day, but I'm sure it makes a difference when they are drafting that, all of a sudden they say, wow, he's 0.2 faster than the other guy that we were looking at. Maybe we could run him as a hybrid, as an H-back or whatever, which of course they've done with him, and he's done fabulous. He's a good blocker too. He's a tough kid. But I'll have a couple for you tomorrow, Pete, mainly on the linebacker side, other than your Oklahoma pal, and I'll have those for you tomorrow.
We'll have to do that. We'll maybe even take a look at South Dakota State and North Dakota State and some of those schools, because they always have guys. I mean, South Dakota State is like a football mecca. Even though they're a step down, those players are studs, and there's a lot of them in the NFL right now.
Ain't a lot to do in South Dakota.
Come on.
Not as many distractions as there are at the University of Miami.
That's true. That's true.
Well, thanks for joining us, folks. We appreciate it. Make sure that you check out right down there that QR code, because if you'd like to join us in Vegas, it's basically a month away right now when we'll be out there with Grant Cardone, Bryn Talkington, Charles Gasparino, Liz Clayman, a whole bunch of great folks. Strategies all day, trading all day. March 22nd. Put it on your calendar. I hope you can join us. Follow that arrow. Just scan that. And we'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.